Welcome, bent riders around the world. My name is Gary Solomon, and you're watching the Laidback Bike Report. We're so glad to have you all with us today. We've got a show with a lot of guests, and we're going to talk about racing today. I'm going to run it down for you here, and I think you'll appreciate what we have to tell you today. We have, first of all, a guest coming back who has been on the show a number of times. It's Charles Coyne. Charles is the owner of Recumbent CycleCon. He has been on to tell us a couple of months ago that CycleCon will be in Nashville this year in October. And he mentioned something about an accompanying race. So we're going to talk about that race with him and see what that entails. The majority of the show today will be based on ultra cycling. We attended the Bike Sebring races last weekend. Had a wonderful time. It was a real eye-opening experience for me and my crew, I think. And we have some of the racers from that show, from that race with us. Dave Lewis, Jim Parker, and Larry Oslund will be with us today to talk about their experience and Bike Sebring. We also have back with us Peter Stull, the Bicycle Man. And as you probably know, Peter is doing a series of segments on our show about recumbent history. And he will be talking specifically about recumbent racing history, as appropriate as it is for the racing show that we're doing today. So we're glad to have Peter with us. Of course, Bryan Ball is with us with the news, and Denny taking a little bit bigger part of the show today because it is about sports today, and he is the sports director. We are also going to continue our Laidback Bike Report contest that we've been doing the last few months. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what to anticipate here, and we'll tell you more about it a little bit later. But I want you to pay attention to our guests and their slides. And if you are the first viewer to best answer the questions that I'll ask later on in the show that pertain to what they're talking about and what you see, you can win. You can answer the questions by sending an email to laidbackbikereport@gmail.com. laidbackbikereport@gmail.com. I'll take a look at those submissions and we'll pick a winner from that. This is obviously for live viewers only. If you're watching this later on YouTube, it will already have happened. So you probably don't have much of a chance. And if you've won in the last few months watching our show, if you've won a prize already, if you could just sit on your hands a little bit, let some of our other viewers have a chance at the prize, that would be great. That prize will be a choice of a Laidback Bike Report hat. You see one of those, and many of our panelists you'll see are going to be wearing those as well. And we also have more of Anna Mitchell's Fat Chick Goes AWOL books. So we'll have that choice for you. You can choose either of those. If you happen to win and you're not in the U.S., mailing probably won't be too easy for us. So we might work out some sort of deal with the book and an electronic version or something. So we'll do our best to reward our winner. All right, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you look down here, you should see a little red subscribe button. Please click that. And you'll also have a little bell symbol you see next to the subscribe when you get there on YouTube. That will give you a notification when we go live or submit a video, so you'll know when we're on. And if you look up in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a little white eye, lowercase white eye pop up. And that will, if you click on it, get you to our website for much more information about the Laidback Bike Report. So please avail yourself of those, and we would appreciate it. As many of you know, we have a very active live chat that accompanies our monthly programs. Those of you that watch live can talk to each other, chat with our panelists, ask questions of our guests, and make comments. We love to see all that stuff. We love seeing all that interaction. It's really what makes the live portion of this show work so well. So please do that. Jump on the live chat. If you are on YouTube right now and you look to this side, I think, you'll see a little window says live chat if you're on desktop. If you're on mobile, and some of you watch it on your phones and that sort of thing, you'll see that below, I think, as we scroll up, and you might be able to find it there. So I hope you can find it and join the live chat. Let us know you're around. Let's go on to the wonderful people who sponsor this show. First of all, I'd like to thank TerraCycle. They're makers of exquisite recumbent parts and accessories for your bent. And Trailside.bike, a fine recumbent bike shop on the Withlacoochee Trail in Florida. And Velocity, builders of performance wheels and rims, handmade in the USA. Thanks to those great sponsors who help us make this show possible. All right, how about our panelists? We have so many people that we have that help us on the show that are in the background most of the time. I want to show them to you now so you can see who they are. First of all, directing our show all the way from Germany, it's Lars Kamm. There you go, Lars. He's usually
Hi, folks. Nice to be here.
Yeah, he's usually pretty sedate and quiet, so we are happy to have you on. Welcome, Lars.
Hi, folks.
All right. And then from Raymond, Mississippi, doing our media today, he's in charge of these slides that you're going to see. It's Trey Burgoyne. Hey, Trey.
Hey, good to be here.
Trey was instrumental in helping me when we went down to Sebring in Florida. He helped us out a lot with the slides. Most of the slides you're going to see today are those shot by Trey. So we really appreciate all your help coming down helping us out, Trey.
Glad to do it.
Very good. And now we'll go to Rochester, New York, where we find the founder and editor of BentRider and the anchor of the Laidback news desk, Bryan Ball. Hey, Bryan.
That's me, my stupid face. How you guys doing?
Good. And your lighting looks spectacular today, Bryan. You're looking good.
Why, thank you. It's the best that I can do with what I have.
Yes, I guess that's what we could also. Very good. Thanks, Bryan. And now over to Sarah, Pennsylvania. Recently back from his trip from in Florida and helped us out a lot at Sebring. It's our sports desk anchor, Denny Voorhees. Hey, Denny.
Hi, guys. Good to be back. Nice to see you. Not good to be back from Florida, but but good to be back here on this month.
It's great to have you. And we also are going to have our pal Larry Varney on a little bit later on. He is holding off because we're kind of cramped for space on the show here, so he'll be on a little bit later on. But we're always happy to have Larry Varney on too. So let's see if we can show his face a little bit later on. So. All right, let's get to the show. We've been working on all month, or at least the last week. First of all, let's talk to our friend out in California. It's Charles Coyne. Charles, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Good morning and good afternoon. Charles is, as I mentioned earlier in the show,
California.
Yep, he's here to talk to us a little bit about what's going to be happening at CycleCon in terms of racing. So, Charles, go ahead, take it away. Tell us what's up.
Well, thank you, Gary. I appreciate your show for having me on this morning. As I think you already know from your last month's show, that in conjunction with the 2018 Recumbent Cycle Convention, Recumbent and Tandem Rider magazine is also producing a race day on October 12th, or rather the 13th and the 14th. And so working in conjunction with Gary Hill from HPVA, they'll be sanctioning and coordinating and actually doing the race. The fairgrounds at Nashville has a half-mile paved track oval, and also within that a half-mile paved quarter-mile. Within the half-mile oval, there's another paved quarter-mile oval. So both tracks will be used. And I won't go through the times and everything, but just the types of races that we've got scheduled is a 1-lap time trial, a 50-lap race for streamliner and streetliner classes. That's on both of those are on the half-mile track. There will be, following that, a 10-lap trike race on the quarter-mile track. Lunch followed by a 35-lap race on the half-mile track.
Hang on just a second, if you would, Charles. Lars, can you show some of those slides? We're going to go through some slides because we do have a few pictures I took. I didn't
great.
take, but there you go. Yeah, there's an overall view of it. Go ahead, Charles. Sorry to interrupt.
That's perfect. Thank you. So you can see the quarter-mile track within the half-mile track, and we refer to it as a half-mile track. In actuality, it's 0.56 of a mile, but it's easier to say a half-mile track. So on that larger half-mile track, there will be after lunch on Saturday a 35-mile lap race. That will include stock classes, stock women, junior, multi, which means tandems. And then the last race of that day will be the last man out race, and that will be on the quarter-mile track. On Sunday, it all starts with a 1 lap timed to place. There will be you'll get 1 lap, which is timed, and that puts you in position for the 1 hour time trial, which will follow. Then will be the group 1 time trial, the group 2 time trial, and then the last event will be the single elimination drag race. And then that will be going down the front straightaway, and then we will have the awards ceremony. So we're pretty excited about that. It's a beautiful track. It's right adjacent to the show. Every racer who registers to race will get free admission into the Recumbent Cycle Convention. And just to remind everyone, that's October 12, 13, 14 at the Fairgrounds, Nashville. If you'd like to see coverage of last year's Recumbent Cycle Convention, you can see every newest issue of the magazine free on the website now. Just go to rtrmag.com and you can view the complete issue. And we've got coverage from last year's issue, our last year's show, and then some information about this year's show, which is also linked to the website, rtrmag.com. So we're kind of excited about the races. It's a first for us, and hope it works out real well. If we can, find other venues with racing facilities such as this to combine with the Recumbent Cycle Convention, then that will be that's kind of something we're looking forward to in the future.
Sounds great. That's just an incredible idea to put those two recumbent events together. I think it's going to make it much more attractive and bring in a lot of people maybe that wouldn't have thought about going to CycleCon, racers, and maybe just the people that were going to go to CycleCon who never thought about racing. Maybe they'll think about getting on that track and giving it a try. Lars, if you can hit
now I have to get back into shape.
You got Brian Ball already. Trey, can you pop up that
really
picture
annoying.
of the track? I wanted just to mention something briefly. Right there, yeah. Lars, could you hit that? Drop not that track, but the low shot. I just wanted everyone to see the view that you'll have. The one before, the view that you'll have from a recumbent bike. I thought this was a great shot. So that's what that was there for. All right, that probably wasn't worth it. Let's move along then. Charles, thank you so much for sharing that information with us. I assume that will be on your on the Recumbent CycleCon website. All that information will be listed there shortly. Is that right?
That's correct.
And we'll have that link, of course, on the description below the video here. So, Charles, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
Gary, thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Very, very good. All right, folks, and now we're going to get on with the issues and the stories at hand about ultra racing and recumbent biking. So, as I alluded to earlier, I was down in Florida the last 2 weeks with Trey and Denny, and we had, among other things, the opportunity to attend Bike Sebring, as you see here. And it was a wonderful opportunity to see what ultra cycling is all about, the camaraderie, the excitement, and the beautiful, the beautiful scenes you see. So we stopped in at the hotel the evening before to see what was going on. Here's registration. And then also a little bit further in that room, you'll see, Denny, pop yourself on if you would. There's the information for the riders. And then, Denny, tell us a little bit about what this is.
Yeah, this is the token board. when you go into when you register for the race, part of the race everybody goes through the 100 miles, the 12 and the 24s. At the turnaround point for the first part of the race, which goes out in Frostproof, Florida, they issue you a token with your number, and you drop that into a bucket out there in Frostproof to prove that you've been out there. So
it's just a verification thing.
Verification, yeah.
And then we were a little bit further along the track there. So let's go on to the next ones. I did before we get to that. I did a couple of no, that's fine, Trey. Yeah, I did a couple of preliminary interviews that I actually posted as a YouTube video. If you haven't already seen it, with the guests actually that we have on today, and also one that isn't with us today, Dave Towns. And we got their impressions of the race and what they expected. So that was really fun for me. Got a chance to know these guys. So we had a nice opportunity to learn about that. And then we got out the next day and started covering the best we could the race. And we set up at Denny's suggestion. I don't know how I would have figured any of this out without having Denny with me. We set up at a rest stop, and which is kind of not named properly because almost nobody stops, but they do sometimes get things handed to them. So there are Denny and I talking over the best approach for shooting the video and putting up the drone and all that kind of stuff. I think that's what we were talking about. What's for lunch? I'm not sure what it was.
And that could be too. Yeah.
So let's go ahead, Trey, move along here. We'll just kind of shoot through it. We also made it onto the track where everybody kind of rolls through. And there's Trey and myself doing some shooting. And then at the end of this was Saturday, at the end of the day, the 100-mile riders come in, and then the 12-hour riders, you saw the little clock there. And there I am setting up a little video there at what ends up being the finish line, I guess. Go ahead, Denny.
Actually, Gary, the 100-milers finished a lot earlier.
That's right, and that's why I have Denny with me. That's exactly right. Sorry,
they finished a lot earlier, but you'll notice it was just about dark. It was just getting twilight when the last riders came through for the 12-hour, and of course the 24s stay out on the track for another 12 hours.
There's a great shot that Trey took there. You can see almost 12 hours, and there's an encore coming through. We're not sure who that is, but yeah, that's kind of cool. And let's Denny, why don't we at this point real quickly take the chance to tell us about the three races. I think this would be a good point to do that. And Trey, if you would, let's shoot up to the results. Denny, tell us about the three different races.
Well, the three races, there's a timed 100, which it's a race, and then there's the 12-hour. Actually, there's four races. There's the 12-hour race, and then there's a 24 drafting and a non-drafting 24-hour race. The non-drafting 24-hour race is as a qualifier for RAM. If you can do 400 miles in 24 hours, it qualifies you for a solo RAM spot. So
Trey, is there one slide right before this? Yeah, let's the one with Dave on. That's it. Okay, so let's start with the 24-hour race. Let's just quickly go through this. We're going to talk to Dave Lewis in just a minute, but you see there the overall results of the male HPV RAM. Go ahead, Denny.
Yeah, incredible 647.2 miles. I mean, it was so much fun to watch because especially later on in the day when he was on the track, he was just so consistent. One lap, 8 minutes, just a little bit less, just a little bit more. But
and I think I'll have Dave talk to us about those three different sections that he had to ride for doing the 24-hour, if we can. So let's and then also back up one more. I'm sorry, Trey. Just before this, Kathleen Palmer.
Yeah,
these are all, by the way, folks. These are all the recumbent riders. That's
there's a lot of upright riders. With this race, we have the slides here. We captured all the recumbent people there this year, and it's a little bit down from last year, but there's always a good turnout. I kind of consider Sebring like the NASCAR equivalent of, or I'm sorry, the recumbent or the race equivalent, bike race equivalent of Daytona, because it's first in the year, and it gets people from all over to this race.
Okay, so we have Kathleen Palmer, who on her Bicetta Carbonero finished at 3:29. Let's go ahead to the next slide there, if you would, Trey. And then the rest of the 24-hour finishers
now,
there is
the top two there, Jason New and Ken Holzenhauser, were qualified for RIM, whether they're going to do it or not. But you get a really nice certificate for doing
because they made the 400 mile cutoff, if you can see, right? The great races for them. And then let's go on to the next. And the 12-hour racers then. Go ahead. We have Rob Bird, Robert Thornton, David Towns, Ruben Randall, all great people I got a chance to meet, and you can see their the bikes that they rode there as well.
I make a note that Rob Bird did a really good overall finish compared to the upright rides too. So 2:21's a very respectable distance for 12 hours.
All right. And we also have Greg Cantori. You'll see a couple pictures of him later on. I believe the only other Velomobile that ran. And he, I think, signed up for the 12-hour, but just ended up doing the Century, right, Denny?
Right, yeah. And Greg is also over here on, he's checked into the chat.
On chat,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Yep,
So,
I see that. Hi, Greg. We're glad to have you with us. And let's see what he says here. When Dave and I rode together in our Velos, we discovered we can indeed draft each other. That was a surprise since they are so slippery. Yeah, that is interesting because there's not much draft usually off of those. So, okay, let's move on to the next, the last of these results slides. And the slide. Go ahead.
Of course, this is the 100-miler, and this was pretty remarkable. The first 6 places were all cruise bikes, and I know Jim wants to talk about it.
We are going to talk about that at length. It is remarkable, pretty amazing. So there you see all of the people, the first 6. I'm going to talk about each of those. I think Jim and or Larry can tell us about that. And then we'll talk about those and show you some pictures. So let's move along. I think that's it for that. And let's at this point then. I think that's the last slide the general slide. So at this point, I want to head it to I believe Sarasota, Florida, where we have our friend Dave Lewis, who you saw in the results as the #1 guy. There he is. Dave, we're real happy to have you with us. And Dave had the Velomobile. He's going to tell us about what he rides and his experience at Sebring. So, Dave, go ahead and take it away.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and hello to everybody out there. Part of the reason why I raced is to raise awareness about how easy and fast and fun Velomobiles are. I've been an avid upright bicycle rider for years, purchased the DF Velomobile just a little more than a year ago. I have built a very exciting, fast TT bike, which Amanda Coker bought from me yesterday. Before I put 80 miles on it, I purchased a Velomobile and fell in love with it. So instead of being on an upright for Sebring, last year I did 12 hours in the Velo. Got back onto the track in the evening, only was allowed 3 laps before the race ended, and it was like, darn, I really wish I could have spent the night on the track in the Velomobile. So looked forward to the race this year, and started training mid-November. Put in a lot of miles thanks to the patience of my family, and had a really great day. Had a good time out there. A little bit stressful. But sometimes races that start with a little bit of stress end up going well. So I was really
Dave, if
happy.
I might just interrupt for a second, Trey, back up that one picture, that kind of close up of him there. I got to say that's got to be one of the best pictures of your ear that has ever been taken.
Well, thank you. My ear is grateful.
I wish, honestly, that hood is great. I know that's so important to you in terms of aerodynamic stuff. It would have been really nice to be able to see your face, because I know there was a big smile on it most of the time that you were out there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, the hood is very important. It probably around 30 miles per hour, it adds at least 2 miles per hour. It really reduces the drag, as do the wheel pants that are fairly well camouflaged. but the DF Velomobile has exposed front wheels normally. But Yimty over at Inner City Bikes.
Trey, next slide. I think get that longer shot so we can see what.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a beautifully molded piece of carbon that just slides up over the wheel, and then you just tape it on, and that'll give you a couple miles per hour.
Those are called wheel pants.
Wheel pants because you kind of put them up over the wheels.
One wheel at a time.
Yes, just like one leg at a time.
Yes, of course.
And yeah. So it was, I've always felt that preparing for a race is the best part. In the months prior, it gives you a great excuse for spending a lot of time on the road, a lot of time in the garage making the Velomobile slippery the couple weeks prior.
Tell us a little bit about your preparation for the race there, as far as training, Dave.
Sure. I've always believed that there's nothing like race simulation to get you ready. So I did a lot of long rides, many 200 plus and a handful of 300 plus, one cross state and back in late January. Basically a lot of 10 to 14 hour rides just to get used to time in the seat, figure out all the discomforts and try to deal with those.
And if we could back up even a little bit further, Dave, tell us who inspired you to ride a Velomobile.
I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and there was this old mod from the 60s. Well, he wasn't old, but his name was Alan Carpenter. He pioneered one of the early HPVs called the Cyclodyne, and he was a great guy. We used to ride around Vespas pretending we were mods as kids, and he used to throw parties for us, and right there in his shop was his project and all the Cyclodyne materials that he was putting together. And we just thought that was so cool. And I really wanted one back then, but of course, way out of my budget. So,
and then how did tell me how that all came about then. How did you get a Velomobile?
I think that weekend was the final race of the year. Came home and looked on Craigslist for a Velomobile, and there was one in Sarasota. And then one of the fastest production Velomobiles in the world, the DF. The other one is the Milan, which I'm hoping to acquire for the Trans Am bike race in June, a lighter Velomobile.
All right. And I also wanted to, in terms of your race now, let's kind of hone in a little bit here. So I talked about this a little bit earlier. Let's talk about the different types of loops that you had to do for Sebring, and tell me how they were different and how you approached each one. Sure.
Sebring is a really challenging ultra course in spite of the lack of serious elevation gain. The first out and back Century is challenging in that there's a lot of stop signs. It starts early in the morning. There's normally fog, condensation on your visor if you have a Velomobile, on your glasses if you wear glasses, and just decreased visibility. A lot of slowing and accelerating on this out and back course. And in a Velomobile that weighs 60 plus pounds, that's very costly as far as power is concerned. It really takes a lot to get it going. But the upper or most northern portion of the out and back is pretty smooth, and there's some good stretches there, and that's kind of where you start feeling good. At least I have in the last couple of years.
So that out and back was like, and Denny, maybe you can help me, is like 89 miles, 87 miles? Is that what that is?
Yeah, right around that. It actually, I think it's around 89. The total is 101.3, I think.
Right. So after you go out and back, then you go onto a road loop that, if I'm not mistaken, for about 11 miles or so. Tell us about that, Dave.
That's coming into the heat of the day, and there's a little bit of traffic. It's a triangular loop. The easterly section, I believe it is. No, westerly is on Highway 98. But the shoulder was nice and clean, and the cars were all very respectful to me and everyone that I saw. It's a nice bit of asphalt on that stretch. That's after a very short, maybe mile or two section after you do your U-turn on the track. From that point, you turn right, and you've got sort of a curvy rolling section that I believe is Route 17A. And the most interesting part of that for me is some railroad tracks that do not have very much asphalt ramping up to them. So they require slowing to about 20 miles an hour. And you just sort of cross your fingers in the Velomobile and hope that nothing falls apart. And then from there, you try to accelerate again. You've got a good little climb, I think, on Strava. It's called the Orange Climb because there's a beautiful orange grove on your right. And then from there, it's a nice bit of a downhill and coast up to your next hard right onto, I think it's Route 623, State Road. It's downhill. It's a little bit bumpy, but not too bad. And actually, the first part is slightly uphill. But it's a fast section, and by the end of that, in the Velo, normally going 34 miles an hour, and then back onto the track to make a U-turn and wave to everybody and get re-energized for your next 11-mile loop.
So yeah, so then you continue doing that 11-mile loop, right, during the day until, as I saw, like around 5:30 or something. At some point, as evening approaches, they get everyone off the road, and you start on the track. So tell us what that's like going onto that track for the first time, the track part, and what that's like.
Oh, it's so exciting. You climb up over a little overpass to gain access to the track, and you've got some cones showing you the way. And then all of a sudden, there you go through the timing, and you're on the Sebring Raceway, feeling like a little race car. It's just incredibly fun. It's challenging. There's some little holes that race cars would not be aware of, but recumbents and velomobiles have to watch out for those. So there's no relaxing in that sense. There's the necessity to find a good line if you want a good time. So you're sort of running the course like you would in a vehicle, taking the corners as tightly as possible and picking the straightest line between 2 points if you're crossing the track. And on the really tight turns, I was finding myself following the lines that were left by the race cars. And so never got bored. 93 laps.
Yeah, in with regards to the track, then, so everybody else, pretty much the 12-hour guys, they finished up. It was dusk and that kind of thing. Their race was done. You still had 12 more hours to go on that track. You remained on the track for the rest of the race, and so of course that entails riding at night. Now, that has to be a much different experience again. Tell us what that's like.
In some of the touring and local riding I've done, I've done a lot of riding at night. The Velo has really good headlights. And of course, Sebring illuminates the course pretty well for us. So it's not as challenging as some night riding could be. But again, you have to really pay attention and look closely at what's coming at you to make sure that you're not going to end up with a flat. And also they put down some little plastic steady red lights that show you the way, and you have to watch out for those as you're choosing your fast line, because if you run over one, it's a pretty big shock, and you might break it, and then that leaves debris on the course, which will flat everyone out.
Getting back a little bit there, there's some crazy numbers on the time for your first 100. What do you know what that was, Dave?
I think it was sub 4 by a little bit, maybe like 3 3/4, something like that.
Yeah, it was 3:40. We were just talking about it over here. That's pretty fast. And the other thing too is the number of laps that you did on the short course, or the short loop, and the track. Do you have any idea on the numbers of that?
I think it was pretty close to last year. I think it was about 17 on the short loop. Something like that. I want to express that there's nothing special about me. This is the nature of the Velomobile, and someone who has spent the time training so they don't become uncomfortable and learn how to manage heat. Anybody can do this. It's I think my average watts for the race were 133. Jim Verhule commented on Facebook. He's like, "What? 133? How could it be so low?" This is how you efficient Velomobiles are. So,
okay, Dave, I think we're going to probably get some argument from some people about you not being so special. But we did have a question that I got via email that I think is appropriate here. It's just more of a comment, actually, than a question, from Alan Michelet. He's, I think, from Idaho, saying, did the riders or the bikes do the winning? Laughing out loud. So you might have already answered that question. You say it's the bike, but I don't know if that's going to be agreed upon by everyone here. So what I'd like to do, if we could, Dave, to kind of finish up with you, I want to know what it felt like when you got done. So you're riding all night long, and now you're approaching the 24 hours. Tell us about the end of the race and what it felt like when you realized, what you'd done.
It was very difficult. My support person, who was instrumental in this, in me being able to stay in the Velomobile the whole time for the
Bill
most part.
Russell.
Bill Russell, yes.
Yes, of course, Bill.
He inspired me to pedal hard the last couple hours, and I really sprinted the last lap. And when I pulled into the pit, I really just was too sore to even get out. It was really difficult to stand. I really couldn't walk. Had to lie down for about 10 minutes, and then just barely made it into the hall where everyone was gathering afterwards to celebrate.
That's awesome. Now let's talk about what you did. So this number, this 6. Now, what we have is 647 in that race result. I saw you posted something else. Can you tell us a little bit about what the actual number was, and then what sort is this a record? I hear it is, and I hear it isn't, and there's some controversy about it, and none of these records seem to be comparable because of the actual track that these people rode on. Tell us what you did and how it compares, and if there's a record involved here.
Well, the record for 24 hours is held by Christian. I'm embarrassed that I don't remember his name, but he was a good friend of Jens Buchbesch, who is the brilliant mind behind the Milan Velomobile, which is a predecessor of the DF. It's an extremely fast Velomobile, and Christian holds the world record. He pedaled over 750 miles in 24 hours. So
I think you're talking Christian van Aschenberg here.
Yes.
Thank you, Lars.
Yes, an incredible man.
Yes.
And I personally, my goal was 1,000K, and thanks to Bill Russell, I'm so grateful that I achieved that. Sebring, in my opinion, is far from a records course. And Jim Parker was so kind to offer to help try to get this result in the U.S. Marathon Cycling Organization's record books. But I know personally at my modest power that I could do so much better on a different loop, open road. As a comparison, the 100 miles, the initial 100 miles took 3 hours and 40 minutes. I've done a sub 3 century by I think 12 minutes with 20 U-turns. So that was done with an average power significantly under 300 watts for 2 hours and 40 minutes. So
perhaps the actual record, will have to wait for another day and a more appropriate course. Are you after that?
Sadly, Christian passed on, and I am more interested in raising awareness about what a great form of transportation and recreation velomobiles are. So I think my goals are probably in a slightly different direction. I'm very excited to participate in the Trans Am bike race, a super cool ultra cycling event, fully self-supported this summer. Really hope I can complete it. There's rumor that the cameras are going to follow it like they did 5 years ago, the cameras that made Inspire to Ride. So maybe there'll be a little camera time for a Velomobile this year if I'm able to pedal quickly enough for the first couple of days.
And then maybe you can inspire others or riding Recumbent or Velomobile to get out there and do it. I think that's really what you're after, isn't it?
Absolutely. And citizens also, not just racers.
So you just answered our next question. What's next?
That is what's next. Sebring was just like a little little tiny race on the way to preparation for the Trans Am.
And in terms of what can happen, so I don't want to leave this story out because I love it. So we saw a picture a little bit earlier of that car following you, and that was Bill Russell, your support guy.
Yes.
And I understand, though he's not a medical doctor, he diagnosed you with mechanical psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us, Dave, a little bit about the mechanical psychosis story?
Absolutely. A lot of weeks tinkering, as I mentioned, trying to make everything quicker. Put on a tubeless rear tire on Tuesday prior to the race and figured, well, if it doesn't work out, I can swap back to the Kojak. It lost air Tuesday night. I spent some time spinning it, like my good friend Chris at Pinnacle Wheelworks showed me, gently to distribute the sealant. Wednesday night to Thursday, no problems. It held 65 psi, 70 psi, which is what I found to be the quickest pressure for the rear tire and the front tires in the Velomobile. And then I spend all day Friday, final preparations. I'm late, barely going to make registration, excuse me, and look down, and the rear tire is probably 30 psi. And I have to get in the car and go to Sebring and register and wake up early the next morning. Did my best to get it resealed. Decided not to bother changing it. Just hoped that the seal would be adequate. Headed off up to Frostproof. I'm pretty sure I sprung a leak in the side. I heard that psh that we've all heard, knowing that at least we had to change the flat. And if we were racing, well, that was it. Race was over. Amazingly, it's a tubeless tire. There was still pressure. So I was able to get back into the pits, but not before calling Bill Russell saying, hey, I think I've got a flat. And he found me and followed me back. And we realized it wasn't.
Lars, hit that picture Trey's got up. That is the picture that I was referring to. And so that's when he said you might have the mechanical psychosis. Because you thought you had a flat.
Yeah, I was convinced it was over, and it was already a sleep-deprived, slightly stressful start, as races go. So yeah, I was definitely in that department, and he was an excellent support person. He kept me calm and was right there for me the entire 24 hours. Couldn't have done it without him, and I'll be missing him on the Trans Am bike race.
Well, Dave, congratulations on that wonderful run. It was so exciting to watch it, and it's so exciting just to talk to you about it. I want to end on, we do have a couple questions. We're running along, but I really want to, and a couple things we can probably put together in terms of questions here too, if you wouldn't mind. So we have a question from George Feligi asking, how did you deal with the heat inside a Velomobile? And interestingly, Greg Cantori, let's see. Yeah, here he is. He had a remark saying, yep, Dave just taught me to ride practically naked. No shirt, gloves, or head bandana, as cooling is the key to keeping up the watts. So I guess that answers the questions. What do you have to say about that, the heat issue?
Well, I've had the good fortune of living in Florida for the past 9 years and road racing almost all of that time. Shaved my head. No hair on me to speak of. That helps with the cooling. Wear running shorts, like for racing, the lightest shorts possible. The DF has a pretty neat channel that channels air to your chest. I sort of cut up a water bottle, like the kind you buy at the store to drink from, not a Biden or whatever you carry on a bike, and channel that down a little more towards my seat, and that helps the cooling there. There's a visor, and as you lift that, you get more airflow. The key is if you're going close to 30, you can stay cool. It's when you're stopping or going slowly and climbing hills. That's where the heat's a problem. I did consume, I think, 4.5 gallons of water and an additional 3 times 28 ounces of liquid over the course of 24 hours. So,
wow.
A lot of water.
Absolutely. A lot of water. All right, Dave. Well, I think we're going to have to leave this part there. Thanks again. As I said, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing that with us. And I hope you can stay with us a little bit. We may have more questions that you can answer along with maybe Jim and Larry. So and we may call on you again. So thanks a bunch for coming on, and we will talk to you again real soon, I think. Thanks. All right, so at this point, let's see, Jim and Larry, if you can unmute yourselves, let's go ahead and talk to you about your Sebring experience. We have Jim Parker and Larry Oslund, who you might have noticed in the results as well, were part of a pack, I guess, of cruise bikes that excelled in the Century Ride at Sebring, and I want to hear all about how they were so successful. So hello, Jim. Hello, Larry.
Hello.
Hello.
Let's start with Jim. I guess we can't put you both on at the same time. Jim, if you could maybe just kind of sketch out for us what your experience was at Sebring and how Cruzbike fit into that.
Well, you know, Cruzbike had a real strong pack of racers. We had some discussion before the race, before going down there, about the strategy. Larry wanted to do an early breakaway, and I've been doing Sebring for the last 8 years. And whether you're in the 100, the 12-hour, the 24-hour, everybody starts together and does that first 100 miles as a group. And unless you're in the non-drafting race, everybody drafts. So you're drafting with the 24-hour, drafting race, the 12-hour, and the 100-mile. And so if you're in a big group, that is definitely the lowest energy requirement to get out and back. But at some point, you got to do a breakaway. So Larry wanted to break away early. I kind of wanted to hang with the lead pack of diamond frame riders and strong racers and weight. So as soon as we got on the track, so still sun was still coming up, we get out on the road, and I'm enjoying myself in the back, and I think, where is the cruise bike? Where'd everybody go? And I pull out to the side and I look, they've already done a breakaway. So Larry and Kyle and Jesse, they're already gone. So
and that's Jesse there, right? Is that right, Jim? There's Jesse and Larry. Is that right?
And so I had to bridge a long way to catch up with them. And I got a whole list of excuses, which you don't want to hear about, but that's one of my excuses why I couldn't hang with them the whole way. So really for me, I'm going to turn it over to Larry to talk about the race. I'll just say that I had great fun riding with these guys for about 47 miles before I just had enough. I didn't get enough training in to hang with these guys. They were really going strong. I was super proud of them. You know, we had a great turnout. I don't know if we're going to talk about recumbent racing participation, but I don't know if there's an inverse relationship between, you know, cruise bike participation and all other, you know, recumbent participation. But I mean, we had 8 racers there, and I mean, that's probably would have been a record for one recumbent brand, except for last year we had 13 cruise bike racers. So we had a ton of racers. You know, we did great at Texas Time Trial. So, you know, I was proud. We had a great turnout, great racers. You know, Ken Holzhausen did as qualified for RAM, and last year he did like 250 miles in the 24 hours. So he came way up to over 400. So it was a great race, great event. I always like Sebring. Larry can tell you the rest about the 100-mile and what happened, because I only saw.
We'll go to Larry and have him tell the story of the race, especially the finish, which was very, very exciting. Thank you, Jim. And yeah, you guys certainly represented well, no doubt. And we will. Denny does have a question to ask you guys, probably all 3 of you guys, about participation. We'll get to that after we hear about the race. So let's go ahead and go. Hi, Larry. Let's get you on there.
Hey, how you guys doing?
All right, it's there. There's Larry Oslund. It's great to have you with us. Really nice your first time on the show. We really appreciate that. If you wouldn't mind, tell us about your experience, a little bit about the race, and especially if you could tell us the exciting details of that finish. We'd love to hear it.
Okay, yeah, to kind of continue what Jim was talking about. I guess my initial plan, I wanted everybody to go out about as hard as they could and do like a 100-mile time trial, but that's kind of like, that's what I enjoy most, is just going hard, you know, consistently hard all the time. And it's a little bit different than road races where you kind of chase people and people break away and everything. And so but Jim really wanted me to try to keep everybody together too, and so I committed to doing that, saying we're going to try to keep everybody together. And the ultimate goal, I think, was to make sure that Cruzbike finished 1, 2, 3 in the end. And I like to say that at least that did happen. I guess I apologize to Jim for maybe taking off too quick, too soon. There's a little bit of history in that, I guess. This is my 4th Sebring. 3 years ago was my very first ultra that I rode a Vendetta in. I did the 24-hour, and that's when it got down to 30 degrees at night in Sebring, and I haven't done another 24-hour since. But like Jim said, everybody, the 12s, the 24s, and the Centuries, they all just ride together. And the games that the Century players, the Century riders do is near the end, they all just go really slow, jockeying for position, and that kind of gets under my skin because I just don't like to. I just like to kind of put the pedal to the metal and go as fast as I can at the end. And so anyway, I really wanted also for us to break the track record, which stood at, I think, 4 hours and 9 minutes maybe. But we missed that by a couple minutes, and that was mostly due, I think, to the fog. To start out, do you guys actually have a picture of that on the track where they had that track cleaning machine?
Oh, we don't. That one that you posted, we don't have that.
Yeah, gosh, that was crazy. It was so foggy, and you couldn't hardly see anything. I think it was.
Tell us more. Yeah, tell us more about your racing. While you're doing that, I'll see if I can go out there and find that for you. Was that you posted that on Facebook, right?
Yeah, I did.
Facebook?
It's just a 30-second.
What I can find. Go ahead and tell us about the race, though, and we'll get back.
So anyway, like Jim said, after we exited the track, that was about 30 minutes. I wanted to keep the average speed at about the race pace, which was about 24.6 miles an hour. So I really tried to take that constant. And kind of what happened is really quickly, we kind of gapped the rest of the field. Jesse came up to me and was like, "Hey, everybody else is back there. What do you want to do?" I'm like, "I don't know." He's like, "Well, we need to do something." And so we slowed up a little bit, I think. And Kyle with that, I think that was JL Perez that owned that DF rider we're seeing. He was so strong. He was in the 24 drafting. He came up, Kyle kind of hopped on him. And like Jim said, Jim had to really burn some matches to catch up to us. But once Jim caught up to us, we pretty much just left everybody in the dust. And we basically maintained about 24.5 miles an hour all the way through to Frostproof. And I know that Jim, he fell off right before that. And he kind of told us he was lagging near the end, that he didn't think he could really keep up that pace. But when we turned around from Frostproof, we were about 4 minutes ahead of the pack, the kind of the chase pack, I guess, for the lack of a better term. And we just continued on trading poles between the four of us. And I guess what it really got exciting, I guess one thing to say is that the upright guy, I didn't actually even know he was in the 24-hour, which is still just kind of amazing to me that he would go that fast. We just thought he was in the Century, and so our plan was to kind of at least try to drop him at the end, because a diamond frame can just outsprint a recumbent with the equal amount of power, just because due to the mechanics of it. So we wanted to make sure that he wasn't around. So once we turned on the final Route 98.
Yeah, sorry, Larry. Let me just interrupt you for 1 second while I have this. There is the foggy track with the sweeping machine there. Do you see it?
I don't see it. Nope.
Are you presenting me, Lars?
No, you have it up.
Yeah.
You have it up.
Okay.
Oh, maybe I have to. Maybe I'm not watching.
Okay. Well, yeah. Don't worry about it. That's fine.
Okay.
And so there it is.
There it is. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so we're going about 25 miles an hour down the track. Well, actually, it says 26 right there, just flying down the track. I was in the lead, and all of a sudden, you just see these bright lights coming at you, probably at about 20 miles an hour, and it was just a real shock. And I just barely had. I just barely had room to get by, and you don't want to run on those white and blue things. See, I did that on my 24-hour, and you'll just hit the ground if you hit those things. So that woke everybody up, I think,
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. That wasn't very continuous. So, but go ahead and get back to your race where you were.
Yeah. So, we turned at about 90 miles, and we turned up towards kind of the final 7 or 8 mile stretch, which finally we actually had a a little bit of a tailwind. We were fighting a headwind for the last 15 miles, which did kind of slow us down, but we did manage to stay together. And when we got on that last 7 mile thing, then we turned up the heat a little bit, started going 26, 27, 28 miles an hour down that stretch. Mostly Jesse and me kind of traded on and off. Kyle, he stayed behind us. And we dropped the upright rider pretty quickly, and we just slowly increased the pace until by the time we turned on that last little mile and a half, we were going about 28, 29, 30 miles an hour. And as soon as we turned down that Howard Taylor road, Jesse came around. Gosh, it was just like the year before. I let out that long straight. Jesse came around me, and then Kyle came around him. And then the two of them kind of just started doing all this little weaving back and forth, like, well, I don't want to lead here, you lead. And at that point, I'm like, I don't want to do this stuff. And so I just passed them both, and I just did like a 1.5 mile time trial out to the finish. And so they just hopped on my wheel, and we all just, I think we averaged about 30 miles an hour for that last, 1.5 miles, and went all the way up, made that final right turn into where the start gates were. And then we just rode as hard as we could down that straightaway. I truthfully didn't really even know where anybody was. I have a little mirror on my hand that I can lift up, but there's no way you want to lift your hand up and look around when you're going 30 miles an hour to see who's there. So we were just riding, and it just, as we came up onto the little time clock, there comes Kyle just right beside me. And so him and me were just both pedaling our little hearts out just to see who could get across. And I didn't really know if I came across first or not. It took him about 15 minutes to find out.
It was a photo finish.
It was a photo finish. I think they said that Kyle won by a tire width at the end, which was about 1 inch. I actually did the math, and if they actually had timing equipment, that would have been that he won by about 0.003 of a second.
That's as close to a dead heat as you could possibly
it's most timing systems don't even time past the 100th anyway. But it was a great race. I don't mind getting beat out by a teammate. The goal was that we all finished 1, 2, 3. It would have been cool if we could have all locked arms and went through the finish at the same line. But
and maybe they could have handed you a glass of champagne going across too. But
something
you
like
can't
that,
have everything, Larry. And not only 1, 2, 3, but as it turns out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as I understand. And if we go back to Jim, if you unmute yourself for a second, Jim, we really haven't mentioned the ladies who also had a remarkable race. Can you tell us just a little bit about the ladies, Katie and Maria too?
Yeah, well, we had 3 ladies in there. Bernie Duval and Katie Constantini, and of course Maria Parker. And Katie is, she's young. Anybody around 30 or 30 or below is young to me. That's
there's kid. Katie and Maria there on the road. Yeah.
And so Katie rode. Her sport was rowing in college, and she hurt her back. And so she's looking for another sport. So she just picked up cycling. Like her longest ride was 30 miles before Sebring. And she had not spent much time on the bike outdoors. She trained on that beautiful blue V20 there, indoors mostly this winter. And, Maria rode with her, and with maybe 20 miles to go or something, Katie just took off. And Maria's like, well, you go, have fun. And so we were, real proud with how well Katie did on her first race.
Right. Not only had she done only 30 miles before, she'd never even done a century. I mean, this is far beyond what she'd ever done before.
Yeah,
right?
It's her first century. And that's faster than a lot of people's centuries that they ever do.
Yeah.
And so
Maria says she's an up and comer, so I think we need to keep her on.
So hopefully she got bit by the bug, and we'll be back. I hope so.
Very good. And I guess the last thing I want to ask you, Jim, before we get to a bigger question Denny's going to ask everyone. So part of what we all talked about this so far today, about the upright racers in this race. And I know part of what you do is trying to get upright riders to notice the recumbent riders and maybe get it, maybe change out and try recumbent riding. This is a big part of what you do. Tell us how you think you're doing with that, and typically at a race like Sebring or in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real tough egg to crack. Standard bike riders, they're a conservative group, I don't know if we're going to get many converts. If people are enjoying their diamond frame and they're riding it, you know, that's fine. I really don't try to convert those people that much. I mean, if they want to come over, that's great. I'm really more motivated about getting the people whose bike sits in the garage and they take it out maybe, you know, once or twice a year and go around the block. So the way we're going to really get there is to open up more events to recumbents. So, do you want to talk about safer cycling now, or are we going to do that later?
No, let's hang on for just a minute. We're almost done. Let me, yeah, we're going to get to safer cycling. This is an organization that Jim's involved with that he wants to let you all know about. So let's open this up for Larry and Dave and you, Jim. Denny, you want to go ahead and ask that question that you were going to ask in your sports report, but I think this is a good point.
Yeah, one of the big concerns out there, you know, we were spectators this year, and talking to the other spectators and participants that the numbers were down this year, and I'd say it was probably 60% of last year. And what do you guys think about it? I mean, why? Is this a general trend right now? I know some of the other folks who said last year the numbers were down a little bit, participation numbers, and the weather was perfect. We've had some good, you know, although the Northeast and South have had bad training seasons, but any ideas why things might be not, you know, the ultra cycling racing is doing some, you know, the participation's down. Yeah, diminished numbers.
I've got a theory about that. I got two theories. One, you mentioned the weather on the East Coast. In North Carolina, it was a brutally cold winter, so we didn't get much outdoor training. So that might have been one factor, a really cold winter. The other factor is the economy is roaring again. There's a labor shortage. I think a lot of people who might have been underemployed, maybe not unemployed, but like working part-time, they're working overtime now. They're working a job and a half now because they're asked to, and they're making up for lost time. So that might be part of it. There might be people who wanted to come, they just couldn't get away, you know, because they needed to work, you know. So that's my other theory on it.
And I guess I have an accompanying question for you guys, Dave, too, if you want to chime in here. So I assume you guys would recommend that the average bent rider get into ultra cycling. You all have nothing but nice things and good experiences with your racing. So how would you recommend that somebody that isn't racing but maybe thinking about it, how do they approach, I guess, maybe training? What do they do if you're going to start from square one to get into ultra racing? How would you recommend they get into it?
Oh, I think a nice way to start is with brevets, joining RUSA and doing less competitive long distance racing that keep you out there on the bike for, you know, 200K, 400K, 800K, you know, 1200K. And it's not competitive, so you just have to finish the distance, and then get a couple of those under your belt, and then you'll be more comfortable doing something like Bike Sebring or any of the other ultra cycling events.
Right. So build up those miles, and then go from there. Dave, you were going to say something. What do you think about it? Oh,
just ride your bike, explore the roads around where you live, and you know, maybe try to go a little further each ride, and enjoy setting a goal for yourself and seeing if you can do it comfortably, and really have a good time with the longer miles, and pay attention to your heart rate and everything else, so that you're comfortable at the end. And it's ultra cycling is just amazing. The community is wonderful. All the people involved are really nice and down to earth. It's not about trying to do better than the other guy or beat the other team. I don't believe. I think it's more just about personal challenge and sharing the fun of pedaling a little bit more than we do most of the time.
As an outsider to ultra racing, I can certainly see what you're talking about, as we attended Bike Sebring, that it was such a family affair and such support from everybody, supporting everybody else. I think you're exactly right about that, Dave. So that's a nice thing to look forward to if you're going to get into that. And maybe, Larry, if I could ask you the last question on this, how would you think is the best way, as a competitive guy, do you think you need to be a real competitive person? Maybe I'm asking the wrong guy here because I know you are, but do you think you need to be a competitive person to do this?
Oh, absolutely not. You know, we make fun of, I mean, that was probably the closest race I've ever had in my life with Kyle, but really it's really about you and what you can achieve. I mean, I'm a competitive person, but I compete mostly with myself. You know, how far can I go? Can I go a little bit farther? It's just a sense of accomplishment from a personal perspective, really. And it's really so little about really racing and beating the other guy. And like you alluded to, it's just a huge family affair. We all take joy in everybody else's accomplishments. We all help each other. I mean, I've had a racer stop on the race course and help me when I fall. That was my first experience at Sebring. 23 and a half hours into the race, I ran off the road and crashed, and somebody else that was on the road stopped and helped me get up.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't see that, you know, riding around town with another cyclist or something. So it's a really close-knit, great community. Everybody just loves each other, and we all root for each other to do the best that we can do. And so to me, that's the bottom line.
That says a lot, Larry. Thanks for that. All right, guys, if you'll stick with us, let's take this couple minutes to go through the rest of these pictures and acknowledge some of the other riders we haven't seen. If you can hit there we go. There's Greg Cantori in his Milan. We talked about the Milan. Go ahead, just kind of go through these, Trey, at relatively quick pace, and we will identify who we can.
And if I could real quickly say something.
Please, any of you guys jump in as we go through these pictures. Go ahead, Dave.
Greg Cantori is the coolest guy. He's been a velonaut for a lot of years. He has dedicated his life.
There he is, by the way, in that dark navy blue
and
shirt.
that's Bill Russell too.
And Bill Russell, who crewed for you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
Greg has dedicated his life to helping other people. He started a nonprofit to put homeless people into homes permanently. And he spent his whole life doing that and helping other people start nonprofits near the area where he is. I just learned this last week. And he's currently an advocate of tiny homes to help the homeless and people who can't afford more, trying to get more acceptance amongst the government agencies to smaller homes with smaller footprints so people can get off the streets. He is a just wonderful man.
It was a pleasure to meet him. He was, that's a great comment on that. All right, thanks, Dave. Go ahead. Let's get on through here. So you can see the names as we go through here that I've labeled, hopefully correctly. And Trey, just go ahead, and I've got 3 or 4 pictures of all the bent riders here that we saw at that rest stop that Denny and I were at. And you can continue on through those as quickly as you can. There's
Ken.
Yep. Well. No. Oh, yeah, that's Ken. That's right. Yep. Yeah, you guys jump in. Go ahead. And I think that's the second place guy. Am I not right? The second place guy in the Ram qualifier, Mr. Bird.
Yep. That was 33. He was the Ram qualifier.
Mm-hmm. On his Bichetta. And I hope I have this name right. I think that's him. And let's continue him along, Trey. You're doing great.
I love the gesture.
That's Kyle's girlfriend, Bernadette. She had neck surgery like 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And she rode 100 miles.
She had the biggest smile on any of the faces I saw when she went by, and gave us a nice gesture there. And I think that's Rob on the Schlitter there. And Ruben Randall.
Ruben. Everybody knows Ruben.
Schlitter bike, giving us the peace sign. Just about ready to overtake an upright bike there. And Rob Thornton, I think. Is that who that is? Yep. These people don't make it easy for me to identify them when they're wearing masks. And what else we got, Trey? We about
That's it.
there? All right. Thank you, sir. Okay, so those were all the pictures we had. That's most of the recumbent riders. So, guys, I appreciate so much all three of you joining us to share your experiences at Sebring. Really interesting stuff. So at this point, let's move along to Jim, who's going to tell us a little bit about that organization that he started regarding recumbent bikes, upright bikes, and their relative safety, I believe. Jim, go ahead and tell us about it.
Okay, so I'm a big advocate for recumbents, and I'm looking for that breakthrough that's gonna make recumbents way more popular than they are now, and I believe that that's going to come through acceptance by the senior games, USA Triathlon, eventually the UCI, USA Cycling. And so I've actually spent time on the phone and emails and writing letters to, like, for example, the board of directors of the USAT and the senior games people. And the final excuse they always give me is, oh, well, it's our insurance. We'd lose our insurance if we let recumbents race. So I said, well, can I talk to your insurance company? Oh, no, you can't do that. That's proprietary. So I thought about that. So, okay, insurance. Let me think about this. Bicycles cause more serious injuries that send people to the emergency room more than football and baseball combined. And those are mostly single bike accidents, not even hitting a car, where people hit a pothole or a stick or a small dog and they flip over on their head. So you're telling me that insurance companies have a vested interest in preventing people from riding a bike that I think all of us in the recumbent community believe is safer? So let's think about this. How did cars get to be so safe and so accepted? They got that way because the automotive industry spent millions and millions of dollars on safety. Okay, and the car from 100 years ago to a car now is much safer, much more ergonomic, built to protect the rider. Okay, the bicycle hasn't changed in 100 years, and that's because it can't change. It's prohibited from changing by fiat, by the UCI, which has defined the bicycle. So what safer cycling is about, it's not a cruise bike thing. It's not necessarily a recumbent thing. It's to help cycling in general. Okay, so I want to raise lots of money to pay for the testing, the same kind of testing that the automotive industry uses. Talking about, for example, crash test dummy testing. So I've got on the phone and I've talked to companies that do this kind of testing. 1 day of testing, comparing a recumbent bike to a standard bike, we need $100,000 for that. $100,000 to do a 1 day of testing. Okay, I don't have that kind of money. I don't think any of you have that kind of money. But if we can get a foundation that has billions of dollars and millions of dollars, or insurance companies that have billions or millions of dollars to invest. So the idea is we have a nonprofit company that can funnel money from the insurance companies and from charitable foundations with the goal of making bicycling safer for everyone. Right now, we have only about less than 5% of our population rides their bike more than twice a week. All right. So, and surveys show, studies show, one of the big reasons people are afraid of getting hurt. Talk to your friends. Why don't you ride your bike more often? Oh, it's crazy out there. I'll get killed. I'll get hurt. So that fear of getting hurt is a huge reason why only a very small percentage of our population rides a bicycle. So if we can make the bicycle safer, then we can get more people riding bikes. So this is it's a long I see the long game of things. This is not going to happen overnight. I'm asking people in the recumbent community, anybody watching this, I don't need your money. I need your support though. And I want you to go to safercycling.org and just sign up on the email, because I may need to direct your emails or your phone calls or a little pressure to get the big money from the insurance companies or foundations to make progress in this. So please take a look at this. This little website I just threw up this week because I was getting on the show. I'm still in the process of getting the 501c3 tax exempt status. It's not easy. It takes several months to do it. But in the long run, that's the purpose of this organization, is to really bring about a slow but completely radical change in the whole bicycling world.
All right, Jim, thank you so much. Let's I want to make sure everybody understands this is safercycling.org. I'm going to put the link into, again, the description below the video, so everyone will be able to see that, click on it, and go to Jim's site. It's a wonderful idea to promote recumbent bike safety, which I think is pretty much we all inherently understand what that's about, but I think we need to widen the view of upright riders and big companies and insurance companies like Jim's talking about. So let's see if we can't support him and get something rolling on this. Jim, thanks for sharing that with us, and we'll see what we could do to support you as well on that. And then finally, with you guys, I almost forgot. I want to let people know how they can get a hold of you, Dave, Larry, and Jim. Some people already know how to get a hold of you, Jim. But let's start, Dave. If you want to pop your your microphone back on, and tell us if people are interested in finding out more about what you do racing or have questions for you. How can they do that?
I think I'm pretty readily available on Facebook. I think you can search Dave Lewis on Strava also, and I think Strava is a great platform for us. Or they can give me a call, shoot me an email. Email is davelewis1323@yahoo.com. I'm really anxious to help anybody who wants to get in a velomobile.
And I know you are, so that's why I want to make sure that we get that spread out. I'll put that in there in the description. And Larry, how about you? What if people want to find out a little bit more about what you do and what you're thinking?
Well, I'm pretty readily available also on Strava. I just search Larry Oslund, or Facebook. I'm also on the board with Jim of the Ultra Marathon Cycling Association, and we're rebranding our name to the World Ultra Cycling Association, so I can be found on that. Also on the Cruzbike forum, I'm pretty active there. I'm happy to field emails, phone calls. My email is just my name, Larry Oslund @gmail.com. And so more than happy to share any of my experiences, and just to get anybody involved in cycling in any way, shape, or form.
Thanks so much, Larry. That means a lot. And Jim, finally, we know about safercycling.org. We will have that in there, but maybe personally or whatever, how will people get a hold of you best?
Feel free to email me at Jim, J-I-M, @cruzbike.com.
Simple enough. Very good. Fellas, thanks so much again. We appreciate having you on. Stick around if you like. We're going to have our next segment talking a little bit about the history of recumbent racing. And for that, we're going to go to our show's historian, also known as the Bicycle Man. It's Peter Stull. Peter, are you there?
Hey, here I are.
There you go, right in the store today. We're glad to have you with us. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what it is that was the history of recumbent biking as you know it?
Well, we've got a slideshow. I'll start out by saying I'm not certainly the ultimate expert on this, and this is the 1933 race with Francis Fowler, who I'm probably pronouncing wrong. Notice they're laughing at him at the start, but next slide. They stopped laughing because he set a new world record that day. And the next year, they outlawed recumbents from international racing. So that was the end of that, the UCI races. Next slide. Next slide. There you go. This is Gardner Martin in 1978. He's riding a Gold Rush. He ran Easy Racers until his death, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, he ran it, but unfortunately, it was until his death. Next slide. This is an almost identical bike to the one he's riding. Happens to hang from our ceiling. I just thought I'd throw that in for fun. Next slide. They get into racing, and this is an Easy Racers recumbent where it's called the belly push, and you lay on your stomach. Go head first. No, thank you. But they did some racing, did pretty well with that in 1970. That is 79. Next slide. This is a Gold Rush, which is basically a Tour Easy with a fairing around it. It's made of aluminum. It's a little different bike, but not a lot. It's pretty much the configuration you saw him sitting on in the beginning. And this bike is, of course, renowned. It's probably the most famous recumbent racing bike, blah, blah, blah.
And the sweet mustache gives you 2 miles an hour.
What's that again? The mustache gets you 2 miles an hour?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I should be fine then. This is the bike that Fast Freddie Martin went 65 mile an hour on for the first time and won the DuPont prize. This next slide, I think it's in the Smithsonian. Yeah, there it is in the Smithsonian. How's anybody want to turn that chain ring? Remember, that's coupled with a 700C rear wheel. Yeah, okay. I haven't done the math. That's a pretty high gear. Now, this is George Reynolds. We can talk all day about George. We will one day. We'll talk all day about George. This is an Ohio race in 2000, which is where I first met George. And he's an animal, let's suffice to say. One thing about George, I got to throw this in here. George holds, I believe he still holds some world records, okay? And the bikes he races are bikes he built himself out of steel in his garage. Okay, now, does anybody else build a bike out of steel in their garage and set a world record? Not much, okay? So George is an animal, and we'll do a show on George sometime because he's a pretty amazing guy. And his bikes don't handle that well at low speed, which is famous. Okay, now this is 2001, Rich Pinto designed the Aerocycle. This is an early Bacchetta Tie Aero. He came to the shop and talked us into becoming a dealer. I rode his bike up Hamilton Hill in the middle chainring, which is a little surprising, especially considering he's way too short for me. Okay, this is Tim Brummer starting off a USCF time trial on a modified bike. As I understand, the rule was the bike had to be less than 2 meters long. So he modified a bike to get it under 2 meters long and was allowed to start the race. So doesn't this look a little similar to the 1933 picture where they're standing around looking at him going, what the heck? But again, they stopped laughing. Next slide. When he nearly set a course record or a national record, he won the event, nearly set a national record. And that was in 2005. And recumbents were banned, I think it was 2 years later it took for the USCF to ban them. This is John Schilder in 2008, the first solo recumbent finish in RAM, Race Across America. The next slide is this is not actually during the race, but this is the team leader of Team Rans in 2009. They finished 2 hours ahead of the first upright team. This is a 4-man team. They finished 2 hours ahead of the first upright team, but they were credited with the recumbent win, and the upright team was credited with overall win. So Randy said that we're really not very motivated to race anymore. This is the same bike. We actually have a used one in our shop sitting right behind me at the moment. But those bikes are out there. They're readily available. This has a more relaxed seat on it. This is Jockey Schilder doing 500 and let's go forward. There you go. This is Jockey Schilder doing 516 miles in 24 hours for a new woman's record. I believe that is the drafting Sebring, but I could well be wrong there. It could be Calvin's Challenge. I really do not know. Anyone want to jump in and correct me? I am open.
And Denny's shaking his head. That's probably not a good sign. So
I'm pretty sure it was Sebring. I don't think Calvin's Challenge had a 24-hour back then.
Oh, well, okay.
Thank you, Larry.
This is Maria Parker, and she set the woman's Race Across America record, which is an amazing story. We may do I'm sure they've already had her on, but there was an accident, a car accident, and she was off the bike for 24 hours and still set a record. Remind me not to arm wrestle Maria Parker. But the bike that has gone faster and farther than any of these, next slide, is of course the Red Roadster. And on this ride, I found there was very little traffic. Next slide.
And air, for that matter.
Or air, yes. This guy did pass me going quite lickety-split, though, I'll tell you. So that shows how little I actually know about racing. But it's an amazing sport, and it's amazing how recumbents have been very successful, and no one talks about it except us. For instance, in the race across America, you watch. I remember one year I watched the race across America on TV, and they were, you know, they had an hour-long special on TV, and they never once was there a picture of a recumbent. And toward the end, they were talking about Team A and Team B, and they're coming down to the finish, and it's a half an hour. And Team B wins, woohoo! But they didn't mention that the recumbent team had finished like hours ago. Well, the ads are all diamond frame companies. Trek advertises there, maybe Cannondale, right? But Rans and Bachetta and Vitae and Cruzbike, they don't advertise there because they don't have that kind of money, you know? TerraTrike maybe, but they don't do racing. So that's the end of that. I'll shut up now.
You know,
next time we'll do a topic I'm a little more familiar with, but it was fun putting this information together.
Wow, that's really great, Peter. Thank you. You know, for those of you who think that Peter is way out there, you have some photographic evidence there at the end to show that, in fact, he is way out there. Peter, thank you. That was fascinating and really fit into the show today as far as the racing theme goes. So we appreciate that. And Peter, where can people find out more about you and the Bicycle Man?
Well, we're on Facebook at Bicycle Man, and we're on Facebook at Linear Recumbent, and we're on Facebook at Avenue Trikes. If you really want to nail me down in a variety of ways, you can also find me at bicycleman.com, linearrecumbent.com, and avenuetrikes.com, or you can email me. I mostly use the pete@bicycleman.com email address.
Thank you, Peter Stull. We appreciate it. We will see you next time. All right, folks, let's move along to a foreshortened sports report. Wait, let's go to Bryan first before we even get to that. So I'm sorry, Bryan, you've got a few things to talk to us about. We're running a little long, but if you could tell us what's up in the recumbent news today. Thanks.
Sure, absolutely. It is winter time, so there's not a whole lot of news going on, but something people are very happy about, if you can pull up my first slide there, we have the Catrike 700s, the new version with the through axle and the new seat design. They're out there now. You can go to your local dealer and buy one. It's not just people like me and Larry that review stuff that have them in their hands. They are out there. So I know a lot of people have been asking me about that. When can I get one? Now. You can go to your dealer. They're in stock, which is pretty great news. Also, wintertime, we have a lot of sales. That's a lot of stuff that occupies the news report over the winter. Two very good ones right now. Both the Bike Rack and Hostile Shop have free shipping on bikes and trikes and recumbents. So that is a wicked good deal. If you guys ever buy anything online, especially a big trike or something like that, the shipping is a good chunk of change. So those are very good sales. Bike Racks runs through March 1st. I apologize, I didn't get the date that Hostile Shops runs through. I believe it's also March 1st. But yeah, enter the code Think Spring for Hostile Shop. Bike Racks is just an across-the-board thing. If you order a recumbent or trike, you get free shipping, which is pretty cool. Also in the news is it's finally going to be warm here in Rochester next week. So I'll be catching up on a whole lot of reviews. So I'm excited. Yeah, 65 degrees on Tuesday. I can't believe it. So nobody try to call me next week. I will be out riding.
All right. You will be incommunicado.
Yes.
All right. Bryan, thanks for shortening that up for me a little bit. We are running long as usual, and I'm going to, at this point, jump to the contest. So listen up, folks. Here come the questions. Listen to what I'm asking. If you have an answer to all four of these questions, or the best you can do, laidbackbikereport@gmail.com. So email me there. I'm going to be looking for those answers and naming a winner hopefully before the end of the show. Here we go. Number one, Number one, what are the 3 racing events at Bike Sebring? What are the 3 racing events at Bike Sebring? Number 2, Who rode the most miles at this year's Bike Sebring event? Who rode the most miles at this year's Bike Sebring? What is the name of Jim Parker's new nonprofit organization? What is the name that Jim chose for his nonprofit that we talked about a few minutes ago? And the fourth question, what was the first recumbent bike to be displayed at the Smithsonian? Perhaps you heard Peter Stull talk about that one, the first recumbent bike to be displayed at the Smithsonian. So if you know an answer to those questions, any or all of them, email us, laidbackbikereport.com. Sorry, laidbackbikereport@gmail.com. Okay, we'll get back to you guys with the results of that and hopefully a winner shortly. And now we're going to go to Denny and the sports report. He's kind of shortened that up for us too. So Denny, you ready to go? Take it away.
Yes, I am. Besides Bike Sebring, there was another bent sports event to note this past month. The Pace Bend Ultra, Friday, February 2nd, was the Pace Bend Ultra 24-hour race located 30 miles west of Austin, Texas. It's a hilly 6.2 mile smooth asphalt loop, a Ram qualifier and part of the Texas Ultra Cup. This year, there were just 2 recumbent entries in the 24-hour race. Steve Timmons, who placed 9th overall with 235 miles, and Dan Fallon, who placed 11th in a surprisingly cold and challenging weather condition. It's not too early to think about training and entering the senior games in Tulsa, Oklahoma in September. The road races and time trials are open to recumbent bikes. I noticed a trend lately with senior games starting to recognize recumbent bikes and riders as competitors. They have been allowing recumbents in quite a few time trials recently, but it is quite rare that they're welcome in road racing events. Maybe it's time we showed up in force just to bring your best baseline. Just remember to bring your best baseline behavior and competitive attitude. And attitude is a big thing. And that's it for this month. Until next time, stay on the bike and keep moving forward. Back to you, Gary.
All right, Denny, thank you so much for that. And now I'd like to once again thank the sponsors of this Laidback Bike Report. First of all, TerraCycle. Check out their unique bags and purple sky flags, if you would. And Trailside.bike. If you find yourself in Florida, near the Withlacoochee Trail, please stop in to see Andrew and his crew. And Velocity, builders of performance wheels and rims. They're handmade in the USA. Thanks to those wonderful sponsors as always. And now, amazingly, we actually do have a winner for the contest. The winner's name is George. Boy, I wish I could pronounce this right. I hope it's right. Felagy. And George came up quickly with the 4 correct answers. So the questions were, what are the 3 racing events at Bike Sebring? George says Century, 12-hour, 24-hour. That is correct. Who rode the most miles at this year's event? He says Dave Lewis. By golly, that is correct. What is the name of Jim Parker's new nonprofit organization? That would be safecycling.org. You have that one right. And lastly, what was the first recumbent bike to be displayed at the Smithsonian? We're talking the Gold Easy Racer, and he is right again. So congratulations to George Felagy. I will be back to you on email, and we will get your prize out to you very shortly. Thanks for participating, all of you that did. We appreciate that. All right.
Hey, Gary,
now, yes.
Did he say safer cycling or safe cycling?
He said safer cycling.
Okay, good. All right.
I probably said safe cycling. I apologize. So, yes. Otherwise, see, now I would have to disqualify him, but I'm going to disqualify me instead. Thank you, Jim. All right. Let's see here. We're going to go now to the closing, if we could. Lars, you want to hit that slide, and we'll talk a little bit about what happens after this show ends and it becomes a YouTube video. You will see within a few hours after I have a little time to work on it, a clickable table of contents. Yes, this show runs very long, but we only do it once a month, so we put a lot of content out there at once. You can take your time, choose the different sections if you like, and click on them, and you can watch it a little bit at a time if you want, or just jump to sections that you're interested in. Clickable table of contents in the description, and all the links, as I've told you before, will be listed in the description of the YouTube video. And it looks like what you see right there in that slide, so you'll know what to look for, and you can click on any of the links that we discussed in every show. How about the next Laidback Bike Report? What do we have coming up next? Well, hopefully we have a picture of this guy. It is Jeff Bishop. Jeff is a very unique gentleman who is building his own Velomobile, and he has been basing it on a design of a fighter jet, I believe. Really, he's got some great ideas and really fun person to talk to. I know you'll enjoy our chat. This is March 4th at 2 p.m. Just a couple of weeks away this time. So March 4th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join us with, and we'll have Jeff Bishop, the unique Velomobile builder. And I believe we're going to have Peter on again next month, if possible. Yes, he's shaking his head. So we'll have Peter on with another Bent History segment as well. Announcements. I did want to briefly mention what happened with Paul Elkins. We did want to have Paul on this month. That was scheduled at first, and then he had something come up. So we're going to postpone that. Paul will still be on with us. It'll probably be maybe early summer before we get him back on. But we have not forgotten Paul Elkins. We will have him on. A couple of shout outs. As I've told you, we spent the last couple of weeks in Florida, and I wanted to personally extend my thanks for the hospitality of John and Jackie Schlitter, who put us up at the Schlitter Bikes Spring Hill compound. Their brand new shop and home. It's a beautiful setup. If you are anywhere in the Central Florida area and maybe even a bit further, worthwhile giving them a call, stopping on in, seeing their shop. He's got tons of trikes and bikes to show, and just wonderful people to talk to. And if you want to talk about ultra racing, there's a couple of people that know a little bit about that as well. So thanks, John and Jackie. We appreciate it. And also, we moved along from there to South Florida, where we were put up by Bob Brown III. He lent us a room. We appreciate his hospitality, and we got a chance to ride with the Bent Society of South Florida. We had a little memorial ride for our former panelist who has passed away, Carl Kidd. It was a moving tribute, I think, to Carl. And so thanks to all you guys who included me in that memorial ride for Carl Kidd. We had a great time down there, as we always do, a beautiful area in South Florida along the A1A. So thanks for that. Okay, now I just want to quickly thank all of our panelists. We had Bryan Ball, of course, who always supports us, and BentRider. So we appreciate all the promotional support, Bryan, that you give us. And you know, the only I want to thank also. Let's go with Denny and let's see who else we have with us here. Lars, and I do want to. The reason I'm stuttering around, I want to get Larry on. Larry, can you unmute yourself? We didn't get a chance to say hi to you earlier, so if you unmute yourself, and Lars, if you can hit Larry there. There you are. Larry Varney took one for the team today while we had too many people in the hangout. So, Larry, good to see you. Thanks for being on.
It was my pleasure.
Okay, thanks a lot, Larry. And of course, our guests that were on with us today one last time. So Dave Lewis and Jim Parker and Larry Oslund. So thanks to all of you for making this show as special as it was. All right, what can you do to support the Laidback Bike Report? Well, as we mentioned earlier, you could subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you hit that little red subscribe button down there, you will subscribe to our YouTube channel and get notifications. You can like our Laidback Bike Report Facebook page and check out our website, if you would, laidbackbikereport.com. There will be a little letter I pops up there, and it will take you directly to our website. And while you're there, you're going to see something that looks like that. You'll see all of our sponsors at the top of the page. I really appreciate if you would acknowledge that you saw them on the Laidback Bike Report and really support them if you would. You'll see our most recent shows, our upcoming shows, past shows. We put all our bonus material and pictures up there for you guys to take a look at later after the show. And you can sign up for our mailing list, which I will send out an email to you maybe a couple times a month, let you know what's going on and when a show is about to happen. And we did have a question on the chat about our hats. Where can you get a Laidback Bike Report hat? You know what? You can go to our website and get something that looks like this. Yes, Larry Varney in a Laidback Bike Report hat. So if you go to the website, you'll see a little section that says buy a hat. We would appreciate if you do that. That supports us. It's $20, $5 shipping and handling. We will get one of those out to you right away. All that at the laidbackbikereport.com website. So thanks for watching, everybody. I know another long show. We sure appreciate you staying with us. I hope you enjoyed it. So from all of us at the Laidback Bike Report, so long, Bent Riders.